All right, everyone. So, Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 35 is out, and I'm here to give you guys my review. Now, I know that this review is late, to say the least, but I do apologize for that. And you know what? I'm here, and I'm going to go ahead and give you guys my thoughts on this latest chapter. And since this is a clear setup chapter for what we're about to get in this upcoming arc, there's definitely a lot for us to go over. So, we're going to go over all of that here in this video. So let's go ahead and start with what we have here at the beginning of the chapter. So we're here at the Shinjuu hideout with Hidari and Jura, and we actually have a very interesting conversation between the two that actually does kind of tell us a lot about what the relationship is between these two. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So it starts off with Jura informing Hidari that Mamushi is dead. And basically, he's talking about how Mamushi was obsessed with his desires and how it's basically the reason for why he ended up losing. He was so focused on his goal that he didn't think about anything else, and it ended up consuming him to the point where it's basically the reason why he ended up getting killed. And he ends up asking Hidari for what he thinks, and Hidari gives a kind of a pragmatic answer where he says, you know what? There wasn't really anything we could do. We were just out of time, and Mamushi ended up not only having his thorn soul bulb, rotting away, but it also resulted in Bug's soul just disappearing. So, because of that, we now know what happens to people who don't have their thorn soul bulb returned in time. They end up kind of dying. And it kind of seems like a permanent death. I don't know if that's actually true. That's just kind of what it looked like to me. I could be wrong. But we end up having this, for me, the most interesting part of this conversation, where he basically, Jura is asked by Hidari, why did he go through the trouble of collecting his thorn soul when he was defeated, but he didn't do the same for Matsuri and he didn't do the same for Ryu. And he basically states that, Jura could have gotten them back if he actually wanted to. And I think we all pretty much know this. Like Jura, he's powerful enough to where if he wanted to get Matsuri and Ryu's thorn soul back, Thorn Souls back, he could have absolutely done that. But, we were wondering, okay, why isn't he doing that? Like, why isn't he, bothering? And, Jura actually thinks about this. And we actually get this very interesting moment where Jura basically takes a moment to think about a world where Hidari isn't there. And he actually expresses that he feels sadness, he feels lonely. And this to me is very interesting because it means that we are seeing Jura and maybe even Hidari getting closer and closer to essentially understanding human emotions because they themselves are starting to feel it. However, this is also pretty dangerous because remember, if you look throughout the Naruto series, what's one of the few common things that we have seen throughout the entire series with a lot of characters, both in Naruto and even in Boruto? When people, feel attachment to people, and then something happens to the people they are attached to, it ends up basically not really ending all that well. Like literally, we have Hidari here, the character or the person he was made from, Sasuke Uchiha, right? What was the thing that drove him throughout most of the series? Basically from the moment he was introduced all the way until like literally the very end of the series. It was his feelings of loss when he lost his family and all at the hands of the person that he looked up to, his older brother. And then what happens when he found out that his, what his older brother actually went through, what Itachi went through, it basically made him just feel more and more hate. First it was at his brother, then it was at Konoha, and then he felt a little bit of hatred to the world itself for even, causing all this stuff to even happen. It's why he told Naruto before their fight, at the end, that his goal is to change the world. He wants to change the system. He wants to implement a new system that will make sure that what happened to him doesn't happen to anyone else. Like that was his whole reason for wanting to become Hokage and wanting to essentially like take over the world, basically, is what he wanted to do, because he wanted to essentially make sure that there was a system in place, a new one that wasn't going to, again, cause other people the same type of, sadness that he went through. The thing that drove him to essentially do all the things that he did, all of the things that he, even in the Boruto era, is still punishing himself over. And now we're seeing Jura is starting to form that kind of an attachment to Hidari. So it does make me wonder what's going to happen to Jura if Hidari goes away. Now, if you remember, I think it was in chapter 5 of Boruto Double Vortex where, we saw that flashback where Boruto met Kashin Koji. It was either chapter 5 or 6. I think it was chapter 5. I could be wrong. Where Boruto met up with Kashin Koji, where Koji told him about 10 directions and all the different futures that he saw. And he told him this thing, right? He told him that he can help him unseal Sasuke from the tree. And in order to do that, they would need to take down Hidari. But something that Koji mentions is that in the future that I saw, when you do this, Jura ends up killing you. And I'm just wondering if maybe the reason why Jura ends up killing him is because of this, because Jura actually formed an attachment to Hidari. And again, as we, as I mentioned, and as we've seen throughout the Naruto series, whenever people, feel hatred, it makes them act out. And, Jura right now, he's operating off of logic, but losing Hidari, we may actually see him for the first time operating on pure emotions. And as we also know in the Naruto series, emotions can make people's powers grow stronger, which is kind of a scary thought because Jura is already insanely powerful. So powerful that Koji had to basically warn Shikamaru that you cannot piss this guy off. Absolutely do not piss this guy off. Because if he gets pissed off, literally there is no one who can stop this guy. He will destroy everything. He will destroy the village. And keep in mind, this is a village that includes Boruto, Kawaki, Damon, Ada, basically everyone, whoever you can think of. None of them could stop him. And so it does make me wonder if this is possibly setting up that to end up happening in the future. That, because obviously Sasuke has to be brought back into the series. We know that's going to happen. It's been set up for a while now. But in order for that to happen, Hidari has to go. So again, it seems like that's clearly what's being set up here. Now, obviously, the story could take a different turn, or it could take a turn, or it could take a different direction, But that to me is at least what it seems like is being set up here. And we also see that Ada is paying attention to this conversation, which now she can use the Senrigan to spy on the awakened Shinjuu because Mamushi isn't there. So there's no threat of her being found out by Mamushi since he is gone. And we now cut back to the village where we see Sarada, and it seems like she's gotten a new prescription, which is actually allowing her to see, because as we saw in the previous chapter, her vision has gotten a lot worse. And, if you're someone who, does wear glasses, kind of like I do, there does come a time where your, vision does deteriorate a little bit more, and you kind of need a new prescription. So this is, for anyone who doesn't know, that does actually happen. So we saw Sarada's vision get worse in the previous chapter, so she needed a new one to actually help her, see. And then she gets essentially an invitation from Boruto. And before we get to this, we cut to Inogen, and he's having a conversation with Kashin Koji, where he's basically telling that from now on, I'm going to need you to connect me to everyone else just in case something happens. Like, that's your mission from now on. And, Inogen obviously is, not really taking this information all that well, because he probably thought that his, connection or his time with Kashin Koji was over. But that's not happening, it seems like. But then we cut to Amado's lab, because in the previous chapter, Amado did invite Kawaki to his lab because he has something he needs to discuss with him. And based on what we see here, we get some very, very interesting stuff happening here. So first things first, Amado shows Kawaki the scientific ninja toads that he has right now that are similar to the ones that Kashin Koji. So for anyone who needs a reminder, the toads that Kashin Koji uses are scientific ninja tools, not toads from Mount Miyaboku. So for anyone who may have been confused about that, there you go. Or for anyone who needed a reminder of it. But he basically tells him that he invented these toads, one especially for a very specific purpose. And he shows Kawaki a monitor that he has right in front of him, where he's showing him his attack and his defense. And he basically reveals to him that he has given his power, or he set his power to 85% attack and 15% defense. And Kawaki, of course, is a little bit angry at this, and he's wondering, like, what the hell's going on? I told you I wanted full access to my power, and yet now you're limiting it to only 85%. And here is where we see an interesting moment where Amado is actually putting Kawaki in his place a little bit, because he's basically reminding him that the only reason you're even still alive is because of me, because I did this. And he also reminds him that, at a crucial moment in the fight with Mamushi, you ended up essentially overusing your powers and you were basically useless. Like literally at the critical moment when Mamushi was about to be destroyed, you overworked yourself and you were basically useless for the rest of the fight. And he basically shows him why he attaches one of the ninja toads to Kawaki, and Kawaki sees that his attack is now at 100%. And he is told by Amado that this was done by me at my will, but it can only be done as long as that toad is there on you. So this is very interesting. So we now know in the future, if someone were to discover this, if someone were to discover that Kawaki's powers are being controlled by this ninja toad, or more specifically controlled by Amado through this ninja toad, then that is something that they can use. But it's going to be very interesting because, for example, someone could wait until Amado shifts all of Kawaki's power to defense and then destroy the ninja toad. And then once that's destroyed, it can't be changed to attack. So Kawaki's attack power will be basically nothing. And while he may be difficult to kill because all of his power will be on defense, such as regenerative abilities, it'll still make Kawaki a bit easier to deal with because his attack power will be basically nothing. So he won't be able to use it to attack his enemies. So this is very interesting. I'm curious to see where they actually take this. And he also reveals to him that basically, because I will be seeing what happens through your eyes, if you are ever caught off guard, I can immediately switch your power to 100% defense. That way, even if you're caught off guard, you are likely not to get killed. I'm not going to say like it'll be impossible for him to die, but it'll basically make it a lot more difficult. Now, this is where Amado tells him that I'm not handing this over for free, which is, of course, pretty normal for him. And he basically tells him that I'm giving this to you, but only if you help me with something. And then we get the whole like, oh, I'm not going to help you with your daughter. Remember, we have a deal. And he's telling him, no, there's something else I need your help with. But before we get to that, now we see what's going on with Sarada and Boruto. And Boruto reveals that the reason why he led her essentially, or asked her to go away from the village, is because he reveals to her that Code, during the Mamushi fight, placed claw marks all over the village. And so basically he could be listening in at any time, so it's not really safe for us to talk there. That's why he needed her to follow him outside the village, or at least away from the village. Not outside the village's, boundaries, but specifically away from where people are living, all the shops, that specific area. And they just have this nice moment between the two where they catch up a little bit, and Sarada's trying to apologize for, his right eye and what happened. And Boruto's basically telling her, you know what, there's no sense in looking back on it. It happened. It is what it is. And honestly, right now, that losing my eye is kind of the least of my worries, which is actually true. And we do see that he is kind of adopting more of Sasuke's teachings. When Sasuke lost the Rinnegan and, people tried to worry about him, he always tells them, you know what, don't worry about it. It is what it is. And you know what, considering who we were fighting against, the fact that I only lost my left eye is honestly kind of a miracle, And you know what, he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong. And we're seeing Boruto actually adopt more of, Sasuke's lessons, probably, a little bit more during the year that they spent, running away from, the village, essentially. And then we get to the moment where Boruto has basically revealed what Code's plan actually is, that he plans to kidnap Sarada and basically use her as a bargaining chip, or basically use her as a hostage to draw him out and basically take them to the divine trees, the awakened Shinjuu. And he also gives her some of his flying Raijin markers. And basically he also reveals to her his weakness when it comes to flying Raijin, that he needs to take time to focus on the ones that are further away from him so he can teleport to them. But we get a very interesting statement from Boruto where he tells her that essentially the second you get there, you need to throw the markers away from you, because I need to focus on the chakra that I imbued on the markers. And if you are holding them, it's going to make it a bit difficult because it'll also, include her chakra along with it. So it's going to make it difficult. That's why she needs to throw it away. Now, the fact that they brought attention to this it makes me wonder, okay, how is this going to play out? Is she going to try to throw them away, or is she going to throw them away, but then someone else, like one of the awakened Shinjuu, is going to find them, pick it up, and basically make it harder for Boruto to essentially lock into the Flying Raijin marker? Like, I don't think they would call attention to this if it wasn't going to be essentially important later on in the story. And he also tells her what he wants from her, which is to essentially allow Code to capture her and basically take him to the, again, so he can use his Flying Raijin to go there and essentially, destroy the awakened Shinjuu, or at least try to. And then we cut back to the Shinjuu dimension where we see Hidari. He's with that book again. We've seen him with this book, in previous chapters. Now, I don't know if, okay, maybe this isn't the same book, but it seems like it's the same book because Jura mentions how he's been kind of focused on that book for a while now. And Jura is told by Hidari that he's, not really reading them. He's not reading them to gain information like Jura is. He's just looking at it. And when Jura sees it, he sees that it's a picture of cats, essentially. Now, some people may find this a bit random, but not necessarily. If you remember in the Naruto manga, we were shown that the Uchiha clan have a close relationship to another clan that is more so focused around ninja cats. Just like how Kiba's clan, the Inuzuka clan, sorry, I blanked out on their name for a second. The Inuzuka clan are, a clan where they work with ninja hounds. Well, you also have ninja cats. And I think Kiba's wife, I remember, is actually someone who, works with ninja cats, if I remember correctly. And so, yeah, we are seeing more of Sasuke's personality coming through to Hidari because Sasuke, again, being a member of the Uchiha clan, of course, has a connection to that clan that specifically works with, ninja cats. And we know that Sasuke is kind of fond of cats. So again, we are seeing that here in this chapter. And Hidari asks Jura, what does he, think when he looks at these pictures? And Jura says, I don't really, feel anything. It's like there's no text, so I can't really get anything from it. And we get kind of this funny moment where Hidari asks him if he finds them kind of cute, which is the name of, the chapter. And Jura just looks confused and he just, is wondering like, okay, what does Hidari actually see in these cats? Like he doesn't really get it. And I am wondering again if this is maybe setting up for something that's going to happen later on in the story. I could be wrong, but that's just again what it seems like to me. So we cut back to the village, and this is where we get to the last part of the chapter where something very interesting happens that we definitely do need to discuss. So we cut back to the village and we see Amado talking to Inogen, and he is told that he has information about the previous battle with Mamushi and that your, conspirator, your accomplice might actually find this pretty useful. And, Inogen is telling him, well, I can't really, go there myself. It's a weird place. So, it might be better to give it to Boruto. And he says, well, no, it's faster if I just give it to you. So just here you go. And next time you see him, just hand it over to him. And honestly, like this should have clued Koji in that something was going on here immediately, because based on what happens later, I'm honestly a little surprised that he didn't immediately realize okay, this guy's planning something. The fact that he is telling him specifically to take this to me, something's going on here. So we get a interesting statement from Kashin Koji where he basically tells him that at this point I haven't gotten any updates from 10 Directions. So he's basically telling him that everything that's happening right now, I don't know. I don't have any knowledge of any of this. This is all completely new to me. So I don't know what's going to happen. So for anyone wondering, how did Koji, shouldn't he have seen this coming with 10 Directions? Well, there it is right there. It's because right now they're operating completely in the dark. They don't know what's happening here. So Koji didn't even know that this was going to happen. And it does make sense because we were shown in the previous chapters that Boruto, while, his heart is in the right place, a lot of his meddling is causing a lot of the future to change. And so because of that, a lot of the information that Koji had is basically useless now. Because again, Boruto keeps doing things that changes the future. And so now he has to wait until he gets an update from 10 Directions in order to know what's going to happen. And so he reverse summons the toad that Inogen has with the information, the scroll that, Inogen was given to by Amado. And, Koji picks it up, but notices immediately there's something going on. And he turns around because he senses that there's someone behind him, but he stops when he sees that it's Kawaki. And this was a mistake on Koji's part because his hesitation led to what ends up happening here. Kawaki sticks out his hand. We see a scientific ninja toad that he has right there, which Amado uses to speak through it. The shutdown code for Kashin Koji. And Koji is now shut down and he's about to be taken to Amado. So yeah, if you remember, all the way back in Boruto Part 1, we saw Kashin Koji when he saw Delta being shut down by Amado. He immediately thinks, oh yeah, this guy probably did the same thing to me. And now we're basically seeing that paid off right here. And that's essentially where the chapter ends. So Koji has been captured and now he's about to be taken to Amado. Now, based on what we saw in previous chapters, Amado clearly wants Koji for 10 Directions, because obviously the ability to see every kind of future is going to be very useful to someone like Amado, who is a scientist who love, information. And basically the ability to not operate 100% in the dark is going to be very useful to Amado, because obviously one thing that he wants to do is to bring his daughter back. But Kawaki actually did bring up an interesting point. We don't know what's going to happen if I bring your daughter back with karma. And, how do you know it's still going to be her? How do you know it's not going to turn into another Otsutsuki? And he doesn't know, but with 10 Directions, he'll at least be able to see what would happen if Kawaki tries to bring Akebi back with the karma mark. At least that's what I'm guessing is probably why Amado actually, wants 10 Directions. Maybe there's another reason that we don't know yet, but to me, that's just what it seems like he might actually need her for. So that's where the chapter ends. Now, overall, I thought it was an okay chapter. Again, it's a very clear setup chapter for everything that is possibly going to happen in the story. Again, I'm not going to say 100% that, oh, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, because I don't know. I've tried to guess in the future and, I've been wrong a lot of times. I have been right a couple of times, but, most of the time, I try to predict what's going to happen and I end up wrong basically like 90% of the time. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go. You let me know what you guys think about the chapter overall in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, thank you so much for watching up until the end. And, make sure to leave a like, share this video, comment down below with whatever your thoughts are. And again, I do apologize for this being a week late. And hopefully for the next one, I'll get it out as soon as the chapter gets released, because I do want to get the reviews to you as soon as possible. So with that being said, thank you so much again. And I hope I'll see you guys for Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, chapter 36. Bye for now.